We're live. We're back here. My name is Stoyan, and we're here the main stage. I'm super excited. Actually, the moderator for the next panel is already here with me. Diana, how are you today?
I'm very good, Stoyan. How about yourself? You must be a bit tired, perhaps?
Absolutely not. I'm super excited, and I'm learning a lot recently about the growing importance of how do we expand to the US market. But I'm more than excited to hear more about media for equity. What kind of animal is this, and why is it important for us to know more about that?
Could be a unicorn. Let's see. We'll find out. Thank you.
We'll find out. Diana, the floor is yours. Enjoy yourself.
Thank you. Thanks, Stoyan. Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me all right? Yes, I see people nodding. Hi, guys. Well, welcome to Media for Equity panel discussion. It's definitely not my first rodeo at this discussion, but it's for sure the first time I have such an incredible crowd with me today as well, and the panelists I'll be introducing in just a second. Maybe just a few words about this concept, because I've realized, looking at people in the audience as well, and from the comments I received online, for sure it's not a discussion or a concept that has been explored or fully tapped yet. So that makes it even more exciting. Just trying to shed some light on how Media for Equity could complement traditional venture capital. We've discussed a lot yesterday and today at the summit about various forms of capital, public funding, venture debt. This time, Media for Equity, it's a new or a complementary investment model to what you've heard already. And without any further ado, I would like to introduce my panelists. I'm joined today by two of the most active investors in Media for Equity, and I would say also pioneers at this model, and as well a very exciting company startup that has raised recently through Media for Equity, and I'm really excited to hear both perspectives. So today's discussion is very much about Media for Equity through the lens of investors who've done it and invested in many companies today, but also through the lens of startups, because most of you that are watching are founders, and I'm pretty sure you'll find this very insightful. How is everyone feeling? How are you guys? How are you, Niko?
I'm wonderful. I'm so happy, and it's so wonderful that you invited us. And I wish I was there in person with you. So this is the next best thing, but very exciting. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. And you're joining us from London, that's right?
From London, that's right.
Right. Boris, how about yourself? Are you in London still? Last time we discussed, you were, I think.
Hello, hi. Yes, first of all, I wanted to say that this is probably one of the biggest events I've ever participated in. So thank you so much for inviting me. Currently, I'm just traveling around Europe. I'm doing some things, not exactly in London, but we are London-based.
Thank you. And Neville, it's really early for you. Is that right? You're based in San Francisco. You're still joining us from San Francisco this morning. I believe you are muted.
Yeah, okay, sorry. Hi, good evening, everybody. Yes, I am based in San Francisco, and it's early morning, 8 a.m. So it's a good time. Everybody starts at 8 a.m. So this is a good start for me today.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for this quick round of intros. And maybe we can just jump straight into the conversation. We have about half an hour left. And I feel like we would need a day, and even that wouldn't be enough to finish the conversation. I would also like to remind everyone watching, this is also streamed live on LinkedIn and Facebook. If you have any questions for either Niko, Boris, or Neville, please do leave your questions on the chat, and I will work here with my team to try to answer those questions. Probably one of the most important questions to start off with, what is Media for Equity? And I would like, on this note, to also give a quick round of maybe introductions in what Niko and Neville and Boris do and their companies. So maybe Niko, I will start with you, because you are the head right now of ITV AdVentures, but you have an absolutely incredible background. ITV, for everyone that doesn't know, is one of the largest TV channels in the UK and the oldest commercial network in the country. But you have a lot of experience in venture capital. You work in venture capital in the 90s, and you previously founded German Media Pool, which is, again, a very active investor in media for equity based in Germany, Berlin. You joined ITV earlier this year, and you created this new model basically from scratch. Can you explain a bit more what ITV AdVentures does, and also why you adopted this model with ITV?
Sure. So my own background is I've worked many years in the media industry and many years in venture capital. And so then media for equity is kind of the combination of those two things, media industry with venture capital. It's a way for the media industry to participate in the growth of startups and to also support the growth of startups using media and not cash. So the thing that the media industry has is ad inventory. This can be television, this can be out of home, this can be radio, it can be print. And it's providing this advertising inventory to scale-ups, so startups that are growing very rapidly. And these startups provide equity to the media groups in return instead of cash. So that's the basic principle of it. And just like you said, Diana, it's an alternative financing model for startups. And one really has to see it like in a toolbox as one special tool that especially consumer companies can use. So B2C companies that are scale up, the more mainstream they are, the better they can use the media that is being presented to them. So for certain companies that fit this kind of setup, it's a perfect way to scale up, to use this media. What I'm doing at ITV, as you rightly said, we're now have a media for equity fund ourselves. We are in one of the most exciting startup areas in Europe, in London. And we are hoping to finance many exciting, fast-growing consumer-focused startups in London, just like Feel. It's one of our portfolio companies. So we're just getting started, and it's an exciting journey.
Great, thank you, Niko. And you've touched on so many great points there, including your focus on consumer startups and direct-to-consumer. That will be definitely one of my follow-up questions. Perhaps Neville will have something else to add there, but it is through our research that we also have done at Grai. For direct-to-consumer startup, it's definitely one of the most probably preferred models as well of investments. But I know from Neville, who invested through brand capital in over 900 companies, that is not always the case of direct-to-consumer companies, and there's also a realm of other startups that could look into this investment model. So Neville, turning towards you right now, you are leading India's largest media group. We're talking about 12 TV channels, 73 radio stations, 108 print publications, and you're effectively reaching 700 million daily users. Going against Facebook and the big social media platforms we have nowadays. Under brand capital, you've invested in hundreds of such companies. For anyone listening today, can you tell us a bit more about the relationship between brand capital and the Times Group? And also, what's the strategy of bringing these companies to India? Because you are based in San Francisco and you're leading the North America market, right?
Correct. Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. So I represent the Times of India Group, which is India's largest media conglomerate. And as Diana just mentioned, we have multimedia platforms. We have media assets across print, television, internet, outdoor, radio. So basically, we have a significant reach. We started, brand capital is really a strategic investment arm of the Times of India Group. We started way back in 2004, and Niko reminded me the last time I spoke to him that we were the first people who really fine-tuned the model. And in 2004, we were pretty much an outlier, right, in the Indian market. But when you look at India as a whole, it's a pretty noisy market. And as digital transformation took place, as new age companies came to the fore, one of the key things that most of these companies required was media. And the challenge was that they couldn't compete because they just didn't have the resources. And that's why media for equity in some of these early stage companies really benefits startups. So the startups can focus on product engineering, providing a great product or a service, and media plays its role to really help them. And we actually grew in India, like you just mentioned. We have over 900 companies with about $4.5 billion in AUM, and it is across categories. And one of the big categories that we developed within the Indian market was the real estate category. And what happened is that we started investing in real estate companies which never used media to reach out to consumers. And now we find that within that category, it's exploded. And we have a special category called brand estate, which only deals with investments in companies which are basically property developers. And internationally, our message, we started our operations in 2015 based out of the United States, applying the same model. However, India is the largest consumer economy right now. There are companies just not in the United States, but in other markets or outside India who want to get to India. And I think we are a great strategic hook. If we make an investment, we help them land themselves in India.
Thanks, Neville. And is it fair to say that, for example, compared to ITV AdVentures, who at least for now, we're just only talking about media for equity for TV, right? So the companies that are receiving this airtime, it is on TV in exchange for equity. For brand capital, we're talking about a mix of channels, right? Including print, including outdoor, radio, and TV.
Yes. Yes, and digital. Yeah, because if I look at the India market right now, we compete with Facebook and Google in India because we've got a very competitive digital reach too. So and the most interesting part really is that unlike in most other markets, print has still not fallen off the cliff. It still commands a huge readership. And we believe that traditional media, which is print and television, still continue to rule the roost in the Indian market. For example, Amazon is one of the largest advertisers in the print in India. It competes with everybody else, but the fact remains that it's a online e-tailer which is advertising in the print to reach out to consumers. So print and TV still rule the roost. And of course, digital is growing very fast and the reach continues to grow.
And I believe this is really important to consider the media landscape in each country, especially for new startups and new founders like Boris, when they are looking potentially to scale their business in another market. Boris, you've just secured an investment deal with ITV. Niko just mentioned that earlier. And your TV campaign is about to air in November, I believe. So it's just a matter of a couple of weeks away. We are joined here by a lot of startups, a lot of founders as well. Can you tell us a bit more how you even came across Media for Equity and how that experience went for you? And maybe just a couple of tips for any startups listening in today.
Sure, yes, thank you so much. I'll just give a little bit of information about what Feel is. So 2 years ago, I started a digital subscription company that is a direct-to-consumer company at the same time. And through the growth stages of the company, we've grown quite well, tremendously well, and as we are today, at a scale-up stage, thankfully. And as you go into digital spend, and we are all born online mostly, and young founders, young companies who are very digitally savvy look at digital acquisition, digital promotions as step number one. So this is tier number one, and some people think that it's bottomless and it will give you customers and exposure forever and ever and ever, and this is not going to end. But fact of the matter is that at a certain point, it'll stop giving you as much as you expect. And this is where you start to explore other avenues. And we are quite focused at Feel on performance marketing. And therefore, we like to measure the results and the output. And our first choice were through tools such as TV Squared, and the likes, we can see direct response from TV. So TV was our second choice after digital. I'm quite a bullet point guys, so I'll give you some tips and some information on a bullet point basis. Now, as we know, digital is what we live and breathe, and to us, we feel like this is the only channel and it's dominating. But fact of the matter is just because we are exposed to this, we think it's the only channel. The audience on TV, people still watch a lot of TV, and the audience is there. It's just with different people who are not founders or not in marketing. They're not digitally savvy. They're normal people, and they're basically your customers, the customers of the founders. They're not exclusive to Facebook or Instagram or any other digital channel. They still watch TV quite a lot. Second thing is, we're still multi-device. We jump in front of the TV, our phone is in our hands. Yes, we think that digital is quite the channel, but also people still consume TV, and we can reach them through multiple points. Whilst you're watching TV, you're scrolling the phone. And what I like about TV, you're in a slightly different mood when you watch it, and you're more relaxed, so you're more open to these messages. Third thing is, I guess, for startups to consider is the reach. Whilst with digital, you try to be optimizing your campaigns to reach the right customers, TV gives you, or can give you, a lot of exposure quite fast and instantly. And some organizations still consider that there is a part of the audience that doesn't overlap. So TV can capture people that you cannot capture with digital. And this is something that startups need to consider as they grow. And the last thing, I guess, is because TV is much more regulated. You can start a digital campaign with £10, £20, set up an account. The trust to digital is quite low, and this is something that a lot of startups struggle with. Consumers don't know. You just created a company yesterday. How can I trust you? TV has that sign of trust. If you made it to TV, that means majority of people will trust you, and they will trust your product or your company. As people say, hey, I made it. And then once you're on TV, people say, hey, I've seen them on TV. These guys are quite well. The way we got onto TV, I think it wasn't a coincidence, but I would think it was a match. Sometimes you just have things happen to you, a match made in heaven. We did run TV before we engaged in that deal to understand how it's going to work for us. Because as Niko said, it has to be a mass market product, or it has to be broad, so it has to fit the audience and the criteria. We tested it, we liked it, and by chance, coincidence, we connected, and the deal happened quite quickly. And yes, the first campaign is going to go live, but I'm not anxious about it because, as I said, we tested it before, it worked. So another tip number 5, or a bonus tip, is before you enter such a deal, you can spend a little portion to see how TV would work for you. And if it does, then just go for it.
Thank you, Boris. You mentioned some of the reasons perhaps why maybe TV is out of sight for founders. Of course, there's the marketing knowledge, which most of the time it happens. And also we've seen that unfortunately many times, or over 30% of companies nowadays, startups, do fail because of the actual lack of marketing knowledge or the product market fit that could be achieved. And also you mentioned, apart from that knowledge, TV, it is a medium that once you are on TV as a brand, yes, you could become well known. However, it's not necessarily one of the channels that a startup would think of in the early days. But when you exhaust the digital channels, which probably would happen at some point, right? You start thinking about TV, but for many years, and at least until now or most recently, TV is still perceived as a channel that is very difficult for a company, for a startup when it's getting started from a budget point of view. It's not very accessible in that regard. So media for equity in your example as well, but in most cases, it's this deal which offers you that discounted rate. That's also another point probably we could touch on later on, especially through Niko and Neville, is that it's a discounted rate that you receive on that airtime and that visibility that otherwise perhaps you wouldn't if you were to buy it directly with cash. So I think that's also Sorry, go on.
Well, sorry, Boris. I don't know. Maybe just a small point from me. I'm not sure whether the discount is what makes a media for equity deal attractive. I think, first of all, I think that online and offline are not kind of the one or the other. They should always be combined. So you should start off with online and then you move into offline media later, and it kind of amplifies your online. You don't turn off your digital marketing when you go on TV. You actually ramp it up. But I think that the main value here is, or the main thing to consider is something Boris hinted at too, is that in order for TV to succeed, you need to invest a lot. And that's a huge difference to digital. Digital, you can do a tiny bit and then see how that works. Then you do a tiny bit more. With television, the biggest effect comes if you have a large campaign that reaches 80% of your target group. And so you need this big lump sum of money. And that's why I think media for equity deals make that more accessible, to invest a lot to have an effect.
Look, there's always an effect of the halo effect of TV as you are spending, as Niko mentioned, as you are spending a lot on digital, it will not run out. You still continue running digital, but when you start running TV, you will see the cost of acquisition on digital also decrease, because more exposure, multi-device, signs of trust. So customers will start to buy you, and the performance of your digital campaigns will increase because they work hand in hand. And mostly, of course, when you launch TV, you don't stop. It's not like you ran a campaign and then you fell at the side of the earth and disappeared. You have to have funds to continue exposing yourself to customers, to continue that path of trust and improving your campaigns. TV, I would just say that I would suggest that from measurable, and a lot of digital number savvy people like numbers and they like measurable things. I think from offline things, and not to mention flyers with direct codes, TV is probably the second best, but certainly the biggest in terms of exposure and mass reach.
So, Boris, essentially, you're adding to the bullet point list that you mentioned earlier, that think about how you're going to keep momentum going even after that TV campaign has finished. And also what Niko said, it's a matter of mixing these channels in the best way possible rather than looking at them in silos. Neville, one question that I also personally ask myself, and Boris and Niko, please feel to also jump in the conversation as well. Media for equity has been around for some time. I mean, essentially, Brand Capital have started, is it 2005?
2004.
Right. So
2004.
So at least two decades. But it feels, at least in Europe, that has gained a lot of momentum, I would say, in the last decade or so, especially in the UK, and I would say the DACH region, so the German-speaking countries. Why do you think that happened? What do you think are some of the factors that are driving this investment model forward?
Yeah, I think a couple of reasons. I think as the economics have changed and the market forces have changed, one of the tips I want to add to what Boris said, what it does is it helps the startup move expenses from operating expenses to the balance sheet, which allows the companies to get to focus on what they do best at, which is product development, and use the media for equity model as an outsourced CMO. And as the market conditions have been up and down, what we find is when things get tough, this model becomes very, very critical, because what's happening then is that the media is using their resources to really fund the marketing campaigns of the invested startup. And the benefit for startup is it not only builds their brand, but it gets customer adoption, because at the end of the day, reach is critical. And like I said earlier, since we have media platforms across the board, when you do a multimedia campaign, to add to Boris, where he does a combination of TV and digital, when you add traditional media and digital, according what we have seen is the growth, the results are exponential. The question is how many people have tried it. Obviously, we have done a lot of work in India. We are now doing work internationally, and some of our international investments are actually seeing benefits of working. So I think the CEOs of startups have to be open, okay, to something like for a media for equity deal.
Thank you. Niko, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question to say, you know, what has happened in the past 10 years? Why is it a model that's now reached a certain state of maturity, I would say? And I think we have at least two things that are happening. One is we have some fantastic flagship examples of startups that have used media for equity to scale and to become huge brand names that everybody knows today. I think one of those is Zalando, which is obviously a global fashion platform, well known in Germany, but also many other countries. They really used media for equity. Many delivery services, maybe many fintechs in Germany. I think in Germany, it's really seen as a model that's established way for top companies to scale. And this is now coming to the UK and other countries too, with very, very top companies like Feel, for example, adapting the model and using it for their own scaling. So that's the kind of flagship users, the flagship. If you don't have those, then nobody can look at, you know, what are the examples of successes? We have those success stories. And second, I think we have a big professionalization on the side of those who are offering media for equity. So at ITV, we spent at least 6 months preparing for the program and making sure it's a lean program. It's a program that works very well as a co-investment offering together with VCs, that is not seen as antagonistic to VCs, but complementary. We've spent a lot of time to define the value, to see, okay, what other value can we bring to the startup apart from the media value? We bring flexibility to the table. We bring a lot of our experts to the table. So all of this professionalization is making this model much more mature. And that's a fantastic thing to see. And finally, maybe I think all of us here want this model to be around in another 10 years. So we're really trying to, you know, have successes and do a good job. We're not, you know, we're not in here for the short term. We're in here for the long term.
Yeah.
Neville, do you want to add to that? I see.
Yeah. So as an investor, just to add on to what Boris said, is basically we come we come in as pari passu to all other investors. We don't have additional negotiations, etc. So we make it simple for startups. We don't want to make it difficult for startups. I think that is a very, very key thing when we do media for equity deals. We don't want to work contrary to the VCs who may already be in the company or will come into the company. So we're very easy to deal with. And I'm quite sure Niko agrees with me on some of these things also.
I have something to add about this. I guess it's important to note that the media for equity VCs are slightly different to typical VCs in one of the ways that are better. There's a lot of hand holding because they become your partners and they know you don't know TV that well. So they'll introduce you to people within their teams because it's a large organization. You have to run a channel, a lot of people involved. There's really a lot of hand holding and support. They're not just giving you the inventory and expect you to figure out what you want to do with it, but all team members are aligned to make sure that your TV campaign is successful. And this is the VC plus the value add that some VCs sometimes don't give you. Sometimes they just give you money and expect you to do everything yourself. With media for equity, it's really the partnership that you will be getting as well.
Thank you for validating, Boris.
But Niko touched on something that I just want to quickly go back to, which is that relationship between the TV station or the media for equity fund and the actual traditional venture capital funds. And you also have that experience at the background, which is even more important. Apart from, I guess, the fundamental aspect that also as a company, and probably Boris can attest as well, you do need to have an initial round of funding raised to be able to raise media for equity later on. How is that strategic relationship between media for equity funds or more specialized funds and traditional funds in this regards, Niko?
We view the venture capital funds as our partners and very, very important ecosystem participants. So we take a lot of time to get to know them very well. We want to know all of the relevant VCs in our market And we've done a lot of getting to know in the UK as well when we established ITV AdVentures. So, and we look at them as the lead. So the VC will always be the lead, and Media for Equity is always a follower in a round. And one of our preconditions is that we will only invest in a company either if a VC has already invested or if we're investing side by side with a venture capital fund. We need that VC in the lead. We cannot be the lead, and we don't want to be the lead. What we want to focus on is deliver good media.
Thank you. Neville, I see you nodding. Do you want to add anything to that?
Absolutely. For us, it's very important that the idea of the startup, the product of the startup has has enough VCs backing it. And what we come in is really providing the expertise of marketing and ensuring the media works for the startup. So in none of our 900 companies do we have a board seat, or do we want to be playing a role into their operations. What we do is we work with them and their teams and help them succeed using our media. So for us, it's important that it's backed by relevant investors, VCs or private equity, and also the fact that they've got a reasonable run rate before we make that investment.
And I think this is important to mention because we have quite a lot of investors listening to this discussion as well. So it's not just startups or corporations in the region, Central Eastern Europe and beyond, but also investors. And I personally had such conversations where I was really positively surprised about some investors that have strategic relationships with such media funds. 5M, I know it's one media fund that has also a venture capital fund attached to it as well. And there's many others that are probably not so visible. However, they would be open to invest alongside Media for Equity funds. One aspect, though, that we touched on together in our former conversation is that, and I think Niko asked, but how can we make this relevant to actually the audience from Central Eastern Europe? And startups listening in, they are tuning in all over the world, so not just Central Eastern Europe, and of course they're looking towards UK, they're looking towards US, even Asia and particularly India to scale. But the question is, what can we do here in the region, particularly in Central Europe, to maybe bring this model or convince some of the TV stations perhaps or media agency to adopt it? Because I'm sitting here in Wrocław in Poland, and I know TVN has done it before a few years back. It's no longer something they are adopting, but it's been examples, right, of such Media for Equity in the region. And I know also from other conversations that some people might be keen, but I just don't think that the positive or the actual the reasons of investing in such model as a TV station, they're very clearly outlined, or it's purely perhaps a matter of mindset. I don't know. It's easier, right, to prioritize short-term revenue over long-term returns and take a bet on those returns, right? So apart from the characteristics of the media here, which of course that could play a role when your media is saturated, your TV spots are saturated, perhaps it's difficult to convince the TV station. Niko or Neville, what would you say to perhaps the media companies listening in today, or they would be watching it on demand afterwards?
Should I start, Neville? You
go ahead.
For you? Okay. The world is, we have a before Corona world and an after Corona world. And what we saw in Corona was this incredible acceleration of digital, incredible transformation. And I think everywhere around the world, it's obvious that this huge value creation created now by D2C companies and in every industry, every advertiser industry that's relevant to media groups is being digitally transformed right now. And this is a way that you can not only participate in the success of these companies and gain longer term value from that, you can also gain unique insights into the digital transformation of your own economy. So it's a unique opportunity that you should use now. Now is the time to do it.
Thank you, Niko.
Yeah.
Neville?
Yeah, absolutely. My message here really would be, it has to be run as a business. At the end of the day, when media companies are leveraging their media for equity, at the end of the day, it's just not mere equity. It's about ensuring the success and ultimate exit if we were to plan to do it. Once you plan to do it from that perspective and run it as a business, I believe that media houses will see a lot of traction in media for equity deals. And I would urge that in even in yeah, in Europe and different countries in Europe, I believe that media for equity can be leveraged if it's looked at as a separate business, which ultimately needs to have a team which identifies the right startups, works with them, leverages the media, and ultimately for the publisher or the media group, it must look at a profitable exit at some stage. We've done that in India. I think one of the biggest ones that we talk about is how we nurtured Flipkart, which was India's homegrown e-commerce site, which competed with Amazon. When we went in, it was valued at it's grown from India, from Bangalore. We invested in the company. We exited at a valuation of about 16 billion, which was when Walmart walked in to acquire Flipkart. So we need to the media companies need to identify those companies which will make a difference in their market, and then consider it as a business. And I believe that would really see a positive growth and more media for equity deals within Europe.
Thank you, Neville. And I guess also one key point that you mentioned is also how to think about setting up that fund, right? Because it has to be what you're saying. It has to be almost a separate legal entity, have that autonomy, that independence from, in this regards, could be a TV station. It's almost like what's happening in the CVC world right now, right? With the corporate venture funds, that most of them are funded separately. However, some might represent the interest of the company they represent, right? I would love to have that conversation separately, perhaps on a legal structure, how to do it right. I was just informed by my team, we have 5 minutes left, and I would like to, I do want to end with maybe a more forward-looking question, perhaps, and also to go back quickly to Boris, and a question to you first, Boris, and then to Neville and Niko. You are essentially just running your first Media for Equity TV campaign. So I would love maybe I'm pretty sure I'll call you back maybe in a few months just to talk about the results and how the campaign is going. But I'm pretty sure it's not going to be the first or the last one. How do you think, or where do you see Media for Equity in your company strategy? And I know that with the current fundraising round as well, you're looking at expanding perhaps to other countries. Where do you see Media for Equity? What is the role of this in your company globalization strategy, to say so?
Look, as we grow, I would have done TV anyway. It's just something that, as I said, we tested it and it works. So we would have invested in TV. Maybe not at this scale, because we would not have such an amount of inventory to go about. But as we expand on this partnership, my expectation from TV is nothing but success. We have some components that will make it successful, such as we have a face of the brand who is quite popular in the UK, Cheryl. Some know her as Cheryl Cole, Cheryl Tweedy. So we are putting her as the face of the company in the ad. So there are components that could make the ad more appealing or more successful. And I recommend startups look for those kind of things, humor and innovative touch. Going on TV, you shouldn't do the same things as other brands do. You should be yourself. So be comfortable with what you do. And my strategy for TV going forward is a fresh outlook on how TV advertising should be maybe done for D2C companies. We would not be copying or adhering to the normal, because digital companies are disruptors and we don't adhere to the normal. So I'm looking forward to extending our disruption in the TV space as well. And this is something that is probably a strategy. I think there's a difference between a strategy and a plan. A strategy is reacting to the things, but ultimately having your eyes on the prize and knowing how to get there. A plan is something that is very detailed, and you don't want to go left or right from it. Digital companies are all about strategies, less about planning. So let's go and face the music, as they say, and then adapt. So we will continue doing that.
It's definitely an exciting space, and I think media as an industry is one that is changing so rapidly. And on that note, I just want to finish with one last question for Neville and Niko, and Boris, if you want to add. We've seen already there's new, I would say, a diversification of the model itself. We talked about that last time, the three of us. We've seen what we call revenue share as well. So there are some companies that are looking into involving digital media as well, or even going beyond just TV, as we've seen with Brand Capital, and looking at a mix of other channels. Where do you see this model going? Would you see Facebook or Google perhaps doing this anytime soon? And it's actually surprising they haven't thought about it already. I'm sure they have.
Yeah.
Perhaps Niko or Neville, please.
Yeah. So thanks, Diana, for asking that question. The way we look at it is slightly different. We believe the next innovation, as we see it, I call it innovation in terms of investing, would be, media companies being limited partners and funds that invest in companies that specifically require media. So media plus cash for funding of these companies. So currently we don't have some kind of a fund which collaborates with media companies for the benefit of companies which require media investment. So I believe that this collaboration between frontline venture capital with a media house, possibly on a global scale, might be the next step as I see it.
Thank you. Niko, 30 seconds. Someone is telling me right now that we have 30 seconds remaining.
Maybe the 30 final seconds is there's so much cash coming into the startup ecosystem right now. It's pouring in, and you could think, okay, that's going to substitute everything else that's available, but it's not. It's leading to a revolution of thinking of what alternative financing forms are there as well. For the reason is that all this cash is financing a lot of competition too, and the startups have to differentiate themselves. They have to be unique. They have to be powerful on their own feet and really compete. And that's why you have to look at all of these different forms of financing and see which one is the best for you, and create kind of that perfect set for your company. And we're in the most competitive environment ever, but we also have the most opportunities we've ever had. So it's a super exciting time to put together the right things and just, be a rocket and go to the moon.
Thank you very much. And what I would love to see as well is potentially at one point, maybe a global media alliance of all the different funds that we have across the world and helping each other's portfolio. Thank you all so much for such an incredible discussion. Kudos to you for everything you do. And I'm sure we'll be in touch afterwards. A huge round of applause for my panelists tonight. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Have a great day, Neville, and a good evening, Boris, Niko. It was. I had a great time. Thank you, guys.